to go.
Buc Procasters, we lost. Losers. But it's all right, guys. It's week 7, fifth game of the season. No time to really cry a river here. Bad game for sure. One we should have won. But nonetheless, here we are. Welcome back to the podcast, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Week 7, right? Game 6, episode 6, quarter 1. Let's get into it. All right, so here we're going to talk about our game reactions to the Atlanta game. Yeah, guys, hate to say it. Back to being the old Succaneers for a while. 2-3. I guess we're not the worst team in the league. The worst defense in the league. We'll get into that in a second. But nonetheless, 2-3. We're not out of it by any means necessary. But we're on a 3-game losing streak, guys. So, like I said, let's talk about some of the there's 3 things I really want to talk about in this segment. Kind of go over the things we talked about going in from the preview last game, and then let's talk about that last play. So, if you guys remember from our last episode for our game preview, there were 2 things we discussed going into the game that we wanted to see. One, how is Jameis Winston going to do in his first start? And then second, how's the defense going to rebound from that god-awful game that, again, we will never mention on this podcast ever again against Chicago? So, let's get into it. First topic, Jameis Winston. I think Jameis overall did okay. He did. If you look just from his stats, again, he was 30 for 41, 395 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's some Fitz magic stuff right there, baby. The big one on the board, right? 2 interceptions. The first interception, badly thrown ball by Jameis Winston on I think it was a post route to D-Jax, going down deep. He underthrew D-Jax, and the Atlanta defender jumped in front of it and intercepted it. It was kind of a silver lining in the game, if you think about it, right? Because the defender was down at the 1-yard line. The defense was finally able to stop somebody in that first half. And we got the ball back with some field position, and we were able to march down the field and really get back into that game. But it's really the second interception that really if there were 2 plays that really define this game, we'll jump into that second interception. But the first one, I would think, would be the missed extra point by Catanzaro after our first touchdown. That really kind of changed the momentum a little bit, right? Because we had all the momentum on our side. Then we missed that field goal. Here we go again, missing extra points. And Atlanta then goes and scores, I think, 24 straight points before we get back on the board. And then that kind of changed what we had to do for the rest of the game, right? So, when we did make that comeback and we were able to get that 3rd touchdown in the game, we had to go for 2. If we had made that extra point for the first touchdown, we kick a field goal, and it's a tie game, and it changes the entire dimension of that game going forward. But nonetheless, we went for 2, didn't make it, and that led us to have to continue to try to come back and back. And when Atlanta made that 58-yard field goal at the final minute of the game and changed it from having to go down and kick a field goal to having to go down and score a touchdown, that's a big difference. And then the second thing really would be what we had talked about. That interception, the second interception Jameis threw, right? So we had just thrown a 50-yard strike from Jameis to Adam Humphries, the great humpback whale, if you will, to get down to the Atlanta 2-yard line. First and goal from the 2. We run it with Peyton Barber. He gets stuffed. Okay? Second and 2. False start on Anthony Auclair. Typical Buc ball. Then second and goal from the 7. Okay, obvious passing down because for some reason we don't have a running back who can punch it into the end zone other than Fitzmagic. Go be it. But nonetheless, obvious passing down, 2nd and goal from the 7, and Jameis throws the interception, right? It was intended to Godwin. Hits the back of the head of Duke Riley, pops up in the air for about 5 seconds, and as any other Buc fan who was watching the game with myself knew, we all knew what was coming, and Brian Poole for the Atlanta Falcons intercepts the ball in the end zone, touchback, Atlanta gets the ball back, end of drive. And that was really the second defining moment of that game. Had we been able to at least score even 3 points, then it's when we go down and score that touchdown, we actually have the lead, right? So those were two missed opportunities that really changed the dynamic of that game. I'm not saying that we would have won regardless, because we'll get into kind of the other reason why we didn't win that game, right? And everybody else knows, just like me, defense. Excuse me. But nonetheless, if we're just going to grade an overall grade for Jameis's performance, I'm going to say it was a solid B. If you take away those 2 interceptions, that's an impressive game. Yes, it came against a terrible Atlanta defense, but I don't really care what defense. It's still an NFL defense, and anytime you have those kind of stats, those are impressive stats. If you think about it, his rating, even with those 2 interceptions, was 115. That's a pretty good rating for a quarterback. Take away those 2 interceptions, and that's elite status, right? That's a great rating. Great day. So overall, solid B. Nobody ever gets an A on this podcast in a losing effort. I don't care how the offense looked. The crazy thing is, and I'll have to give Greg Allman some credit from the Tampa Bay Times. Since the merger in 1970, there have been 58 teams that have rushed for over 100 yards and thrown for over 400 yards in one game. The record going into our game, before we did it this past game, for those teams that did it, was 56-1-1. We're just finding crazy ways to lose games. That's Buc Ball, apparently, in the Jason Light era. All right, let's get into the second point, and that is the Tampa Bay defense. Were they going to be better? That first half, big no. Atrocious. Once again. I don't know if you can even call that defense. The purpose of having a defense on the field is to stop the other team from getting into the end zone. And at will almost, basically, Atlanta was able to do that whenever they wanted to. We are the worst red zone. Let's just put it this way. We're the worst defense in the league. We are giving up a historical 35 points a game average through the first 5 games. Historically bad, that is. We're giving up a historically bad 436 yards a game. And if you're looking at red zone defense, out of the 16 times teams have been in the red zone, 16 times they've scored. 15 of those touchdowns. Yeah, think about that. The teams are 15 of 16. It's over a 90% success rate. Historically, just terrible. Even in that second half, when we got better, still couldn't even defend a simple running back, out of the backfield pass for a touchdown to Tevin Coleman that helped extended the Atlanta lead. But let's digress. The first half, abysmal. Second half, gave me a little bit of hope. They played a lot better in that second half, especially that third quarter. They came out and they exerted a little bit of dominance against that Atlanta offense to help us get back into the game. It's good to see that there was some confidence from that defense, because in that first half, flowing in from the Chicago game, I didn't see any confidence of anybody on the field. Even our studs quote-unquote studs that we have on our defense. McCoy, where was he? Levante David, you could see he was frustrated. JPP, he's frustrated. Quan Alexander, frustrated. Nobody had any confidence. And then second half comes, and you see a little bit of pep in the step, a little bit of more aggressive, a little bit more of a defense that you want to see from such a highly paid defense that, that one that we've invested in. Here's a good stat for you guys. We've invested over $80 million of our cap space on our defense this year. That's sixth most in the league. If money were to translate to performance, like it probably should, we would have the sixth best defense in the league. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and we have by far the worst defense in the league, even with that second half performance in Atlanta. Just tells you how historically bad this defense has been. And because of that historically bad performance, and some of the voices on this podcast and many of other Buccaneer fans over the last 3 weeks, the Buccaneers finally did what they should have done probably before this season. They fired Mike Smith going into this game. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He just, I'm sorry, even if he's probably he was a good coach, but the game has somehow, he either doesn't care anymore or didn't care anymore or just was stubborn in his ways, and what he was doing wasn't working, and by far wasn't working. The team just, the defense, we have good enough players to have a better defense than what we're showing. So it was a move that should have been done a long time ago, but fortunately they've made the move. Mark Duffner, the Duff Man, as I'm calling him, going to take over as offensive coordinator, and we'll see. Maybe that second half was kind of a transition to the Duff Man strategy. Nobody's ever will know. But you can definitely see a difference in the team, and hopefully they'll continue that momentum going forward into the next game. But nonetheless, overall performance of the defense, I'm going to give it a C minus. Nah, D. It'd be a total F if it weren't for that second half. So D. They get a D minus, if you will. But all right, guys, let's stay a little bit positive, right? So that's our game reactions for the Atlanta game. Let's throw it over to our boy John for some overreactions going into Week 7. Hit him up, boy.
All right, Bucs fans, it's time to talk about something important. This isn't a good team anymore. Remember that feeling Week 1, Week 2, going into Week 3? We were the talk of the NFL. They were handing out those Fitzpatrick beards in the stadium. People were feeling us. We were feeling ourselves. That ain't it anymore. We suck again. We're a losing team again. We're 2-3. We're back to a losing record. And as of right now, I don't see anything to change that. The defense is on pace to be historically bad. Give up more points than any other team in history has ever given up. That's not a team that's about to take the step to the next level. That's not a team that's close. This is a bad football team. Now, I've got to ask myself what's changed. Granted, we gave up a lot of points in Week 1. We gave up a lot of points in Week 2. But we won those games. We found a way to win those games. Week 3, we found a way to lose. Week 4, we got blown out. And against the Falcons, we found a way to lose. And there's a lot of blame to go around. Essentially, every position on this team is playing like garbage, with the exception of our receivers. If it wasn't for the fact that we have one of the best receiving corps I've ever seen, this team would be laughable. Laughable from start to finish. We've had to put our best receivers, like Deshaun Jackson, on to special teams in the return game, just to make something happen. Now, our kicking is questionable still, and a lot of people want to put blame there as if the kicking is what's costing us games. It's not what's costing us games. It's terrible. I don't understand why we can let a guy like Connor Barth walk away, Patrick Murray walk away, or Matt Bryant walk away. To watch a guy like that kick 55, 60-yard field goals still, why is he no longer on our team? Those are hard questions to answer when our team has been so bad. You look at our linebacking play. Our linebackers are terrible. Levante David is playing like garbage. There's going to be a lot of apologists for him, but where has he been? Name one play that he's made all season through the first 5 games that you can remember. None. Quan Alexander is going to be looking for money at the end of this season. We're unfortunately probably going to give it to him. He was just voted in as a captain. In fact, all 3 linebackers were voted in as captains. And I think that says something about the mentality in the locker room. But where has he been? Outside of 1 splash play, maybe 2, where's he been? What's he playing like? I know he's missing tackles. I know if you want to improve your yards after contact stat, run right at Quan Alexander. Run right at him. He's not going to tackle you. Our defensive line play, with the exception of JPP, terrible. Absolutely terrible. Gerald McCoy is very clearly out of his prime. He has been for some time, in my opinion, but you can really see it this season. Trash. Playing like absolute trash. And the old excuses of, well, they're double and triple teaming him, they're not anymore. That's not happening. Rewatch last week's game against the Falcons. He didn't get double or triple teamed once. Not one time. You know why? Because he's trash. He's old. He's slow. And to see him and Quan, who are the 2 most overhyped, underproducing, glaring problems with the mentality on our defense, dancing on the sideline, was embarrassing to watch. Cool, you got a 3 and out. You're the worst defense in history. Is that what you're dancing about? You're going to cut a jig up? You're going to enjoy that? Awesome. You're the worst defense in history. That's what you're on pace to be right now. I really hope that dance and celebration was worth it. I really hope Gerald McCoy gets to go home and say to himself, man, I really love to play football. Why don't you love to win? Warren Sapp came in here and he said, this ends now. This embarrassment ends now. Gerald McCoy came in here and said, man, I really love football. And that's awesome. Good for you, buddy. Dance on somebody else's sidelines. Dance at home. Stop the opposing offense when you're on the field. How about that? Do you think maybe you should have been stretching, resting your calf, talking to a trainer instead of dancing? Because then you got injured. And now you're not playing against the Browns. And we don't know how long you're going to be out. But you were out last season, and you've been out before, and you get injured a lot, and you're old. Why are we wasting time on you to dance while giving up more points than any defense in history? Why? The secondary is garbage. They're garbage. Is that their fault? I don't think so. They're rookies. A lot of them are young. They've got nobody with them. They have no veteran presence. They just lost their defensive coordinator, and they're not going to get a good one for any foreseeable time frame. They're in trouble. Those young men who need a steady hand at the wheel to guide them and to coach them and to teach them and help them become what they need to be, that shit ain't happening. But they're garbage too. You can say, well, they got Brent Grimes. Where has he been? I watch him fall a lot. I watch him get burned by younger, faster, stronger, taller receivers. He should have retired last season, but we didn't have anybody to replace him. And he's playing like trash. Real awesome. Our second round pick running back, who is too stupid to read the playbook, is playing like garbage. He sucks. He could have been a defensive back. He could have been a quarterback. He could have been a safety. He could have been literally any other position. Hell, he could have probably even been a kicker again. he's trash. He's bad. He's a bad running back. He like tore it up against really soft defenses in college, and we're paying the price for that pick. He's bad. Caleb Benenoch is not an NFL player. He's not good. You know how I know? Because right now he's on pace to give up more sacks than any offensive lineman in history. How is that possible? Are you proud of yourself at night when you go home? You know, do you tell yourself, like, man, I'm a starting offensive lineman in the National Football League? You're the worst one. The worst. The worst statistically they've ever seen. Where's the guys we brought in to play that position? Where's Kappa? You're telling me he's not ready, but Benenoch's ready, and he's given up more sacks. He's on pace to give up more sacks than anybody in history. Kappa can't play that bad? We can't get that kid some reps? I mean, if the guy's just going to get run over, he's just going to blow right by him and beat our quarterback to death. Start the rookie. Do something. Well, he's trash. Jameis Winston came back. Surprised me, he looked pretty good. Threw for almost 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. But he threw some picks in the red zone, 2. He had a fumble. He's listed as having 2 fumbles, but one was obviously that ridiculous last play. Man, I hope he gets better. And I hope he plays really well because we're going to need him to. He's not worth the money we're going to have to pay him next season. He's not worth the money that we're going to end up paying him. He's a middle-of-the-road quarterback, which is what he's always proven. I don't care that he's throwing for 4,000 yards every season. This is a passer's league. You can't touch a quarterback. You can't hit him. You can't hit a receiver. You can't impede the run. You can't get in the way of the play. I hope you can throw for 4,000 yards in this league. Jesus Christ. This is a bad football team that has deflated all of the hype from the first 3 weeks. We were 1 play away from being 3-0, and now we look like we couldn't be further away from being a winning team. Where's the hype? Where's the enjoyment? Where's that fire and fun that I saw in weeks 1, 2, and 3? I'll tell you where. It's in the trash, along with the play from this team. I think the Glazers made a great decision in firing Mike Smith. It just came 2 years too late. And now we're in the middle of a season, and we're in trouble because we've got a rookie quarterback on the worst team in the league. No, not us. We're getting ready to play the Browns. And he's probably going to come in here and light it up because we're 1-11 against rookie quarterbacks in the last 10 years. And nothing I have seen all of this year leads me to believe that we're going to be any better on Sunday against the Browns than we were last week or last year. I had a lot of hope going into this season that this team would be the team to surprise me, given the weapons we have. And I don't feel that way anymore. And some people call that an overreaction. Oh man, we're 2-3. We beat the Browns. We beat 3-3. Who cares? Who cares? If we give up 35 points, who cares? We can't win every game in a shootout, especially not in this division. And we're eventually going to have to stop somebody. But right now, if the Bears rookie quarterback can do what he did to us, I don't see why Baker Mayfield can't. And we're going to face some other rookie quarterbacks down the stretch, and they're going to probably light us up too. We got to make some serious changes. But the first thing we need to change is how we feel as a team about playing football and what matters when it comes to playing football. And wins matter. It's all that matters. we suck, and we're not going to get very many wins. And in the last couple of seasons, short of that 1 5-game stretch where we got super lucky, where have the wins been? They ain't been there, and they ain't coming back. So I hope everyone lived and loved and cherished the first 3 weeks of this season. Because you can call it an overreaction, but that's probably all you're going to get.
Touchdown Tampa Bay, Mike Evans. Bucs lead 6-0. Again, fire those cannons. 6 times.
Welcome back after halftime, Buc Bros. And now we're on to our dual threat segment. A segment where two bros offer differing opinions on a relevant Bucs topic. And this week's is no surprise. Will the defense look better under new defensive coordinator Mark Duffner? I'm going to take the cons on this one, and I'll start us out with no, will actually look worse. Now, I know what you might be saying. How can we possibly look worse when we're last in points per game or last passing defense? And I've had those thoughts myself, but that's on a relative scale. We can always allow more points per game. We can always allow more yards per game. We're actually 5th in the league in rushing yards per game. We could always be worse there. So there are things to not improve on, but get worse on, obviously. And I don't have a very optimistic view on this one. There are a couple reasons why I think we're going to look worse. Number one, obviously, we're going to be learning a new system under Mark Duffner. I guarantee they did not replace or fire Mike Smith with Mark Duffner just for him to run the same system. So we're going to be learning some new things. Now, obviously, as you're learning new things, and since we don't have a bye week to kind of shore up on anything that we might think is lacking in the new system, we're going to be learning week from week, and we're not going to be experts right away. So since we're not experts, what that means is we're more prone to mistakes. And we were prone to mistakes with a system that Mike Smith had for us for 3 years. So in a new system, I can only imagine that we're going to make more mistakes. Now, that's not on the defense's fault because that's just where the chips fell. They didn't decide to have a new defensive coordinator. The front office did. So obviously, I can't fault them for making mistakes in a new system that they really haven't learned yet. The problem here is that our team, even with Mike Smith's system, where we were prone to mistakes there, wasn't able, with the leadership and maturity that we have, to overcome them. If we would make enough mistakes, we would lose the game. We kind of saw that in Atlanta last week. I can only imagine that more mistakes will equal more exploitation on the Bucs, which will lead to harder games. So it's not a hard concept to get. We're going to have more mistakes. It's going to make winning games harder, and winning games is already hard enough for us. So with more mistakes, I think the defense will look worse. Reason number two, I looked up Mark Duffner's past, and really, he's been a linebackers coach in the NFL for years. He only had one stint as a defensive coordinator. That was back in 2002 with the Cincinnati Bengals. And guess how he did? He was last place. He had the worst team in terms of scoring points per game with 28.5. So we are literally replacing Mike Smith, who was last in points per game this season, with a guy whose only defensive coordinator stint resulted in last in points per game. So Mark Duffner isn't really a defensive guru, I would say. He's not the savior that we're looking for. It was just he had experience. Yes, he's been in the league for a long time, but he's always been a linebackers coach ever since the 2002 season. So obviously, teams haven't had him on the radar as a potential hire for defensive coordinator. So with the new system, making more mistakes, and Mark Duffner's kind of track record, it doesn't really look good, and I'm pretty pessimistic about it. Bryce, maybe you can offer me a little bit more optimistic view from your viewpoint. What do you think?
Ryan, it's not that you got to be optimistic about it, buddy. It's just, how could it possibly get any worse? I mean, under Mike Smith's direction, the Buccaneers were giving up 35 points a game. That's historically bad. So, in my opinion, the change in leadership, dismissing Mike Smith from his defensive coordinator positions and then promoting Mark Duffner from linebacker coach to now interim defensive coordinator was a move long overdue. Now, we don't know too much about the Duff Man, as we're affectionately calling him here at the Buc Bros podcast, his defensive style, but yet he does have some defensive coordinator experience. He was a defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals under Dick LeBeau back in the early 2000s. I'm not saying that team was great, but he's been in the league for over 20 years, so it's not like this is a new up-and-comer or guy who's never been there. This guy has been able to, this guy knows defense. So I think we'll see somewhat of an easier transition than if we had promoted somebody else, i.e. Brinson Buckner. But there's really three keys that I want to see out of this defense. One, I want to see a more aggressive defense. And I mean that from both a defensive line and blitz perspective, and then your secondary as well. From defensive line, we need to be more aggressive, getting after the quarterback, whether that be stunts, playing off each other. If we're doing stunts, if we're doing spins, whatever we got to do to get more action to confuse the offensive line of the other team. Blitz, obviously, we got to send our linebackers. Our linebackers are some of the fastest in the league. Yeah, they have a tendency to over pursue. Obviously, they're not very great in coverage, but I tell you what, they get after the quarterback pretty well. Both Quan and David have a knack for piling up those tackles for losses. So why not use that to our advantage? And then in the secondary, I really, really hope we get out of this zone 3 coverage scheme that we've been doing over the last 3 years that obviously hasn't worked. Giving receivers 10 yards of cushion off the line, in my opinion, this day is unacceptable. Do we have the best man corners in the league? No. But we should play some more man. Let's get up in their face. Let's knock them off. Give our guys in the front 7 some time to get to the quarterback. All right. Number 2, I want to see some accountability. Guys can't be going back on the field that continue to miss mistakes over and over and over again. There's a reason you've got backups in this league. It's not, yes, obviously it's more for injury purposes, but there are backups there that probably are biting at the chance to get in there and show what they've got when you got guys that continue to make mistake after mistake after mistake. And it's not so much from, a game to game or so much a series to series perspective. It's more of we got to hold people accountable for making their mistakes and starting to learn from our mistakes, right? So, for example, we have yet to defend the wheel route to a point where they're not running down the seam, scoring a touchdown. I mean, that's a simple defensive adjustment. Same with picking up running backs out of the backfield. That's simple adjustments. And yet we seem to struggle with that. And I don't know if it's a personnel thing, but if it is, then there's got to be somebody, especially those waiting in the wings, that probably can do that. And then number 3, I want to see a real defense. Yes, I know it's not really a thing that you can see, but I think it should be, right? I mean, we're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're known for defense. Come on, guys. 35 points a game, that's garbage. So I want to see some improvement there, obviously. Stop giving up so many points. And I think you will here in Week 7. Game 6 versus the Browns at home. I think that second half of the Atlanta game, yeah, the defense wasn't great, but they were able to get some key stops to get Atlanta's offense off the field. And I think you'll see that momentum kind of carry over into this game against Cleveland. Especially Cleveland starting Baker Mayfield at quarterback, a rookie quarterback. They don't have quite the same offensive firepower as the Atlanta Falcons or the New Orleans Saints would. So I think you'll see improvement here in Week 7. All right, guys. You know what time it is. Fourth quarter. The money quarter! Take it to the house, Ryan.
Hey, Buc Bros. Welcome to the final segment of the podcast. As always, we're bringing you a game preview. Now, this week's opponent is the Cleveland Browns, and we're facing them at home at 1 p.m. Eastern. Good old Raymond James. Now, the Cleveland Browns and the Buccaneers are coming off of a loss. Obviously, the Buccaneers coming off what seems to be a close defeat against the Falcons, 34-29. As we Bucs fans know, it's a little bit more soul-crushing because we had plenty of ways to win that. We just didn't do it. Whether it be the defense not stopping the Atlanta offense in the first half, or it's not kicking our extra points, or it's Jameis throwing interceptions into the end zone. Take your pick. For the Cleveland Browns, it's a little bit of a different story. They got pretty handily by the Los Angeles Chargers, 38-14 at home. They actually didn't score their last touchdown until a minute left in the fourth quarter. I know this because my buddy Zach played Njoku and ended up winning the fantasy game by less than a point. So good win, buddy. But in any case, both teams come into Raymond James with a losing record. Our beloved Bucs at 2-3, Cleveland 2-3-1. Now, if you look at both teams on paper, they stack up pretty evenly. The Bucs are ranked 13th overall in total offense. The Cleveland Browns are 18th, so not a lot of separation there. In terms of defense, the Cleveland Browns are pretty much as low as we are. The Cleveland Browns are 29th in total yards per game. The Buccaneers are 31st. We each have our own strengths. The Cleveland Browns have a better pass defense at 20th ranked compared to our dead last. We have a much better run defense. We are 5th overall, which I didn't know until just now. We have a pretty good run defense. Cleveland ranked 29th. So now the one thing to note is that Cleveland does do something very well, which is manage the ball. Their turnover ratio is best in the league at +7. So they're good at forcing turnovers on defense, not really turning the ball over on offense. So overall, I think it's a pretty close matchup. Generally speaking, I'd probably be a little bit more optimistic than I am today because of just our 3-game losing streak. But that said, let's get into some specific matchups and what I think could tilt the game. I'll start with an individual matchup. Donovan Smith versus Myles Garrett. We all know Myles Garrett was the first-round draft pick for the Cleveland Browns, first overall, 2 years ago, and he's been pretty serviceable since. He's got 5 sacks on the season, just under a sack a game, and he is a physical monster. So we're going to have our hands full with him. Interesting note about Donovan Smith, though, he has allowed the second most pressures in the league since he was drafted. So awesome. Now, he almost got the title for most overall, but Eric Flowers was signed to the Jags after being released from the Giants. So Eric Flowers still retains his title. Donovan, you're only number 2 worst. Way to go, buddy. So obviously we're going to have our work cut out for us. We're going to have to help Donovan out as much as we can. The good thing, like the statistics indicate, is that this is pretty much all pass rush. If we can allow our run game to facilitate them to maintain their gap control a little bit more, maybe it affects the pass rush a little bit more. We'll see. But I expect Donovan Smith to have tight ends, running backs, even Ali Marpet help him out tremendously. I wouldn't mind if Myles Garrett gets a sack. I don't think you're going to stop him. He's kind of like a poor man's Von Miller right now. But we can't allow him to overtake the game for us. So that's our individual matchup. My second thing is not really a matchup. It's not really a statistically based thing. It's just an observation. I want to see us have a lead at halftime. If you've noticed, the games I've noticed, the 2 wins we had a lead at halftime against the Saints and the Philadelphia Eagles. On the flip side, the 3 losses, we've been down, and at the very least, by 2 scores going into halftime, with down 30-10 to Pittsburgh. I'm not even going to talk about the Chicago game. It's erased from my memory. And down 24-13, I think, against Atlanta. So that's 2 scores. So yeah, I just think it would be a morale booster for us. Playing with a lead, much easier than coming from behind. We almost did it against Atlanta. We almost did it against Pittsburgh. I don't want to almost do it. I want to do it. So much easier to play from ahead than playing from behind. So let's get after them. Let's get a fast start. Offense needs to take care of the ball, needs to go down the field. We obviously see that we have the weapons to go down the field at will. We saw that with the Atlanta game in the final minutes, almost getting to their end zone with less than a minute left. So we obviously have the capability to do that. So why can't we just do that earlier rather than waiting for the fourth quarter? But Yeah, that's a little observational from my point, but I think it would help us a lot. My third key to the game is just how is the defense going to play, and most notably, the blitz. First of all, just how the defense is going to play. We have a new defensive coordinator in Duffner. Let's see, does the defense come out with a little bit more vigor, a little bit more energy? Let's go play for our guy. We got the new guy, the old guy's out. We got a new thing going on for us. We'll see how that affects the team mentality. Obviously, since our dual threat, I don't really think the defense is going to be that much better, but maybe it will. Maybe it will. But in the key aspect of it, and to me, is the blitzing. If anybody has watched the games I've watched, the blitzing has been absolutely atrocious. If you look at any blitz we've done this season, it seems like the quarterbacks have even more time against the blitz than if we're just rushing for. I don't know what Mike Smith was doing. It seemed to me that he was only blitzing the A-gap with 2 linebackers. We could send 6 people after the quarterback. They only have 5 blockers. And for some reason, Matt Ryan has all the time in the world to throw that ball to Julio Jones. It's infuriating to see. And it doesn't seem like rocket science. Send more guys than they can block. Somebody's got to get open, but let alone we couldn't. So I'm interested to see the blitz packages Duffner brings, especially him being a linebackers coach and us having the linebackers to actually blitz. Levante David and Quan Alexander should be very good at blitzing the quarterback. They're very fast. They're very quick. They can get in quarterback's faces when allowed to free up. So we'll see how that goes. I'm interested to see how the blitzing packages are. Now, for the overall game, I'm not optimistic at all, honestly. I would, like I said, be more optimistic, but the Cleveland Browns have shown improvement from last year, and I don't think we've shown any improvement at all. So I'll still go with the homer pick. I'll say 20-16 Buccaneers in a low-scoring affair. We'll see. I hope it's a better victory, margin of victory. Let's just be honest. I hope it's victory. We could win by 1 point. I wouldn't care. I just want a W. It's the Cleveland Browns. Like, come on. But in any case, those are my keys to the game. We'll see how the defense plays with the new defensive coordinator. We'll see if the offense can take care of the ball. Honestly, it should be an easy thing. Lean on the offense. Take care of the ball. Have a time possession that's better than theirs. We should win it. Like, keep the defense off the field. You have the offensive weapons to do whatever you want. It's not rocket science. But for some reason, we find ways to lose the game, and that's what losing teams do. So we need to get that mentality out, and hopefully it starts with this game. So that's all for this podcast episode. If you please like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. It just helps us know that you actually like what we're doing, and we'll put a little bit more effort into it every like we get. So again, let's go Bucs. As always, let's fire some cannons, and we'll see you guys next week after Cleveland. Let's go Bucs.